Welcome to the Grief Ladies, the practical guide to what comes next. I'm Kelly Daugherty.
And I'm Karyn Arnold, and we are two grief professionals with over 50 years of combined experience. We're here to validate, educate, and give you tangible tools you can actually use.
Each episode motivates you to take action and reminds you it's okay to want to feel better. This is the Grief Ladies, a guide to what comes next.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back. I'm Karyn Arnold here with my co-host Kelly Daugherty, and we're going to be focusing on the letter R, which is rebuilding. And we kind of summarize that as to do with like structure, routine, some of the day-to-day habits and things that maybe have really changed in the wake of loss. And we're really excited to be welcoming here today with us Kat Farace. So, Kat, welcome. Thank you for
Thank
being here.
you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. So we always like to take a minute to read the bio just because, the experience. And we were very excited to find that we are all hospice people with hospice experience. So, Kat, I'll go ahead and read your bio. With over 25 years of experience in hospice care and grief counseling, Kat blends professional expertise with deeply personal insight. After losing 14 close 14 close loved ones by age 30, Kat transformed her lived experience into a meaningful career, rising to become a regional mentor for the largest hospice organization in the U.S. Her work aligns closely with our grief framework, offering daily practices to aid with emotional challenges, social interactions, and discovering meaning after a loss. So, Kat, it just seems like you're perfect to have on here. So thank you for joining us, as we
Oh,
said.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kindred spirits.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think people who work for hospice, and we probably have people listening that have had a loved one on hospice support and a lot of different experiences with that. But it is such a important philosophy of care that I think we all believe really strongly in. So yeah, as you said, it definitely we know the work and we know what's involved. So it's a wonderful experience to have. And I'm sure you're going to be bringing a lot to that today.
Thank you.
So, Kat, as we're talking about rebuilding in this routine, what advice would you give somebody grieving that's maybe in the earlier, maybe it's the first couple of months or so, and they're really struggling with the disruption of their life and feeling really overwhelmed with that? How do they start rebuilding that structure into their life again?
Now, routine becomes very important just to push you through the day. But one of the most important things that you really need to incorporate into that routine is self-care. Is to really take care of yourself and to give yourself space to be able to grieve. To allow those emotions to flow through you and give yourself time to be able to do that. Often I would tell my clients, before you go to work, before you get up and you get going, give yourself 20 to 30 minutes just to journalize or to, light a candle, look at your loved one's picture, have a conversation with them, and just have that moment of memoriam with them. Because once you feel like you've given some time with them and recognizing your grief, sometimes you're able to move through the steps of your day much easier. So, there's all kinds of wonderful techniques and things that you can incorporate into your days, into your routines. It's just finding what works for you because we're all so unique and our grief is unique. Our schedules are unique. And so that's kind of what I like to help with is finding what works for you.
Yeah. And I think your name of your new venture is balancing grief, right? So like what a perfect segue into this topic. And I love what you say. I'm a big believer, like I choose to meditate in the morning. I just feel like if I do it in the morning, it sets my day up for success.
Yep.
It's good. And I agree. Like if you can do some of this stuff sitting with your grief a little bit and doing all of these things to acknowledge your grief early in the morning rather than putting it behind the wall, you then can go throughout your day rather than it letting ooze out throughout the day,
Right.
So I know you have an outline you call the best results, and it's a set of tools to support meaningful progress on your grief journey. So would you mind sharing a little bit about what that looks like?
Oh, absolutely. I came up with best results because there were certain things that I felt like needed to be discussed in grief work that we don't really talk a lot about. And BEST just came out. So, and B standing for brain. We don't talk about what the brain is actually going through and how it actually operates. There are two spheres in your brain that has a default mode network and a task positive network. And we often operate in the default mode network. And when we're grieving, we definitely do. That's where you get the looping thoughts, the spin outs, the overwhelm. And task positive network is where you're adding some focus to your thought. You're not letting your thoughts run away from you. So the B stands for brain, just kind of going over a little bit about how the brain operates and how you can help with all those looping thoughts where you feel like you're just crazy. I'm going crazy, I feel so overwhelmed. And so a little bit about that. And then E is to examine. And examining is really about examining your thoughts, your belief systems. What did you believe about death and grief before you experienced it? We often think that we have an idea of what grief feels like or what a death experience is, and then we go through it and it's completely different than what we expected. And maybe we need to examine your beliefs because maybe they're not going to serve you now. So examining our belief systems is really important. And then, of course, very important is that self-care, self-care. Finding the techniques to be able to take care of yourself during this time, to give yourself space to grieve. And then the T, of course, are the techniques. So putting all that together came up with BEST, and that's how I came up with it. And it seems to be a lot of these techniques and the BEST is curriculum is what I've been using for a lot of years with a lot of my clients, and it seems to work very well.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, in terms of techniques, because again, a lot of what we're talking about is like these action,
Hmm.
and really, I think there is plenty of grief work, and you've seen it, I'm sure, in what you do. There's the telling your story, and that's very important. There's a lot of that kind of talk therapy, maybe that a person does, but at some point, I think people feel like, okay, well, I can talk about it all day,
Hmm.
but what am I actually supposed to do?
Right.
And, as we're looking at sort of this rebuilding part where because for a lot of different reasons, whether they shared living space with the person that they lost or if they were a caregiver, for a lot of people, the structure, their routine, even if they've just, I know Kelly, I'll take from your example that, you used to call your dad on your way home from work, and having that time that now looks different, and people trying to
Right.
figure out how to fill their time, or there's these empty spaces. So with some of this framework that you're using, I guess specifically with the techniques, what would that look like for a person as they are looking to kind of rebuild that structure and routine?
Okay. Yeah. A lot of what we do is really finding out what are the specific needs of that person. Like I say, everybody has a unique grief experience, but some of the techniques we can use are, it's been talked about over and over how when your loved one dies and maybe you're a full-time worker and now, you're carrying the load, you have to get back to work. And so how do I get through that workday? And so some techniques to be able to get through that. And some of it could be, first of all, you need to talk to your boss about it. And then I talk about finding a coworker that can be a buffer for you, somebody that will stand in between you and everybody staring at you now because you just lost your loved one.
Mm.
That'll help be able to communicate what you need, and you can communicate to them, hey, I need a break right now, can you cover for me? So those kinds of techniques are things we talk about. Taking a reset where, you can feel the emotion welling up on you and the tears are welling it behind your eyes and you feel like you're just going to break. There are some things you can do to help calm that down. I call it a reset. Some of it is physical, where you can just squeeze your hands a little bit, take some deep breaths. That changes the chemical going on in your brain. It'll actually help you to calm a little bit. And then do a quick little body scan of, okay, I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm going to relax my head. I'm going to relax my neck. Gonna relax my shoulder, gonna feel relaxation in my abdomen, and just go down. It doesn't take long to be able to get yourself from that default mode network where you're spinning out into the task positive network because you're doing a task. It could be as simple as counting and breathing. So there are many wonderful techniques that are out there to help. One thing that I encourage people to do when they're struggling and sleeping is 2 or 3 hours before you go to bed, write a list of all the things you're worried about.
Hmm.
We often don't think about writing the things we're worried about, but if you can get them out of your system, just get them out there, fold that up, put it away. You know you've written it down. Sometimes that can release your brain from having to spin out on it when you're trying to get to sleep. So these are the techniques that we're looking at in helping people to move through uh, those spinning out times and the overwhelm that they feel in their grief.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's hopeful about it is just the idea that there are tools, and
Hmm.
things that a person can do. Um, and what's interesting is I think sometimes we have utilized some of these tools, whether it be journaling or breathing or meditation or something for other things in the past. And there's times that we just fall out of practice or life
Yeah.
gets busy. So I often like to remind people too that like, are there things that you've done before? That have helped you through a hard time? Or are you starting this brand new? I mean, either way, there's things that we can make work, but it's a matter of putting it into our routine. And I think, we're used to scheduling appointments, we're used to making time for different things, but understanding these things have to be is scheduled in some ways or
That's
counted
right.
on, just as you would anything else and prioritized. I know a lot of times, there's a whole list of things that need to be done. And then I'm at the bottom if there's
Mhm.
time, for me to do these things. And I think our message through loss is that that has to change and you have to move yourself up that list.
Yeah, personally, for me, in my own experience, having all those losses from a young age until I was 30, um, I'll just tell you, we didn't talk about death. I didn't
Mm.
even know it was coming. We didn't talk about grief. It was just happening in my life. And the more we didn't talk about it, the worse it got because I kept suppressing the emotion. You just you if everyone was afraid to discuss the losses with me because they were afraid I would be upset. And we've got to stop worrying that we're going to upset someone. For me, it was harder not to talk about my losses because now you've just eliminated that person from my life. Not
Mm.
only are they gone, they're completely eliminated. I can't even talk about it. And, but that's all I knew. So I just kept on doing what I had to do, pushing through, suppressing my emotions. And what happens? I got sick. I got chronically ill. And so it's so important to bring into your routines self care and allowance for you to feel the emotion, let it move through you. So, yeah, from personal experience, I can tell you, I think a lot of the illnesses people have, it's because they're not taking care of themselves or allowing that time for them to take care of themselves.
Yeah, I mean, you've read, I'm sure you've read The Grieving Body that came out, this year and talks
Mhm.
about the immune responses that we have, right? Our
Yep.
immune system, our inflammation numbers are higher, we're increased vulnerability to illness, right? And then our heart disease, all sorts of things can happen when we're grieving. And if we're not doing that self-care and taking care of ourselves, what can happen? I just shared a couple of weeks ago, it was the 31st anniversary of my mom's death, and I wound up, my dad died this year, so it's like kind of re-grieving my mom again, and I wound up with a case of diverticulitis. And I'm
Mm,
like, "There's no coincidence here that this
yeah.
is happening on this day," right? Grief
No,
finds a way to manifest.
it does. It does. And there are techniques and there are ways to move through. And that's really what grief coaching is about. I came up with balancing grief to become a grief coach. I know I did a lot of counseling uh, with hospice, but grief coaching is really those practical techniques. It's really showing someone how to navigate through the feelings that they're having every day and giving themselves a sense of balance, a sense of security, comfort, because they know what to expect if they have education on what the symptoms of grief are. And then how do I manage that?
Yeah.
Looking for a grief community that actually feels supportive, not overwhelming? We built one. The Grief Ladies community on Facebook is a private, free space where you can connect with others who are navigating life after someone they love has died. Inside, you'll find weekly prompts, practical tools, conversations that feel real, not sugar-coated, and a place where your person is honored. If you want steady support and a community that understands what your days look like right now, come join us. Search the Grief Ladies community on Facebook or tap the link in our bio.
Yeah. And Kat, with the work that you do, what are some of the more common challenges that you see coming up for people? Like, I know, for example, a lot of the people I talk to, groups, individual, things like that, it really struggle to get motivated. We can be talking about some of this idea of like things that we need to do, but sometimes that motivation can be hard to find. What has some of your experiences been as far as that goes?
Yeah, motivation is a big one. And, when we feel sad and depressed, we're going through deep sorrow. I usually tell people, we all go through times where we feel depressed. We want to close those windows and put the covers over our head in the bed and shut ourselves in. Uh, when it becomes a problem is when it becomes day after day after day. And then you start not taking care of yourself, maybe not brushing your teeth routinely, not taking a shower routinely, not eating like you should. And that's really when you need professional help of a grief counselor to dive a little deeper into what's going on. But for most practical grief, the things that really I deal with a lot are people that have to go back to work, or they're now the single parent trying to raise their children, and how do I manage that? For the older demographic, because we do have senior demographics in grief, it's usually, I don't know how to do the things my loved one did, and so how am I going to get these things done? And there's different things that you can do. I've told many women, seniors, that every time something comes up that you're not sure how to do around your house, or maybe you're hearing a noise in your car or whatever it is, write it down on a little piece of paper, stick it in a box or a jar, and then the next time a family member or friend comes over and says, hey, if you ever need help with anything, it's at that moment you don't think about what you need help with, but now you have a jar of things that you need help with. And boy, that has worked really well for a lot of people. So yeah,
I
those are the
love that.
practical tips. Yeah, that we need to come up with. And when people are so kind and they're always saying, "Oh, I'm always here to help," if there's anything I can do. And when people say that, often you're just in a space, you're not thinking about it. You're not thinking about what you need.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, write it down when
Exactly.
you need it.
Well, so what I was thinking about as you were talking is, a lot of the widows that I work with and how much, or even, children also when they have to deal with their parents' estate.
Yeah.
Here, I'm my father's, right? My sister was the executor, so I didn't have to do as much as she did. But, um, like there's a lot to do when somebody dies. And
Yeah.
so, like, it can feel really overwhelming. So, any ideas or suggestions on like how to navigate that while also grieving and putting that into making part of that your routine as well.
Yeah, use your resources. There's so
Mm.
many resources out there. There's wonderful books with information. There's so many websites with great information, support groups. You're talking to people who are going through it. They can give you great resources. All hospice companies have a bereavement program. Your loved one does not have to be on hospice in order for you to utilize the bereavement program. So I would encourage you, find those resources and utilize them. Don't try to do this on your own. You're not
Mm.
expected to take care of all this on your own. It's too much. When you have friends and loved ones saying they'll help, say okay. A lot of people say, "Oh, I don't wanna burden them." You're not burdening them. They want to help. I always flip that with a lot of my clients, and I tell them, Let me think. Let's flip this around. Let's say, your daughter lost their husband. What would you wanna do? Would you wanna help her any way you possibly could?" And they would say, "Absolutely." Would you feel good about doing that? Absolutely. So why won't you let your daughter feel good about helping you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Turn
It
it around. People do wanna help. Use your resources. Mhm,
I think it's definitely true that, like, we all feel good helping people, but we deny
mhm.
that feeling, and I always try and think of it, like, as you said, in those terms, and people are usually feeling bad, and just as the grieving person is trying to figure out what to do, the people around you are trying to figure out what to do,
Yes.
how to help, so it kinda is giving them that opportunity, and I think, Kat, what you're speaking about, and Kelly too, is that, life just keeps going. People that are grieving don't get to just stop and grieve. I would say it'd be so nice if there was like some island or retreat or something where just everything is
Yeah,
taken care of and there's no, cleaning and work and, getting your taxes done and all this kind of stuff. But it doesn't happen that way. Life goes on. And that's the hard part is that it just keeps moving. So I think trying to keep up with some of this is about, I think, thinking about what you can manage. A lot of times I talk about trying to do it in smaller pieces, and
mhm.
decide what you can do, like sort of in the present and staying here right now. And so I think that's sort of what you're, talking about here. And I love, just the suggestions using resources. We have to kind of ask for help sometimes, even when it's
Yeah.
really uncomfortable.
Yep. We do. And why wouldn't we? There's a lot of we're all going through grief at some
Hmm.
point or another. And we all need to rely on each other through this and break down those barriers that we have about talking about grief and how to support each other. Back in the old country, uh, decades or centuries ago, if somebody was grieving, they were expected to wear black for a year. The whole community knew they were grieving, and the community rallied around them and took care of their every need. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Hmm. Hmm.
And, we just don't have that today, and maybe it's not practical for our society, but there certainly is a lot of support out there for you.
Yeah.
Lot of support.
Yeah, I was just speaking to someone just this week, and she has a physical injury right now. Now she has been grieving for
Mm,
some time, but she has a physical injury that has a cast, and she said she went to an event. There was more people there, and she got so much more like support and "Are you okay?" and people stepping back. And she was like, "So interesting. I just got this physical injury, and it's the first time people like." Really showed that they're trying to help, but like people know what to do with that. Oh, let me carry that for you. Let me help you with
right.
that. I always say it's kind of like the baby on board stickers. It's like be careful, and if we could have some sort of visual representation, but we don't. And most often people are saying, "Oh, you look so good, and you look
Yeah.
fine," and so that makes it kind of confusing too.
Yeah, it really does. I know, I've often told some grieving people when you're going out in social arenas, you don't have to expose your wound to everybody,
Mm.
because sometimes they don't know how to handle your grieving wound and they'll say something that just kind of puts a dart in it. And sometimes you just have to know how to move through those circumstances and only utilize those that you can trust with your wound and your pain. And so it's looking for those that can support that for you. And you will find that in a lot of support groups because everybody's kind of going through the same thing.
Yeah, I think with probably the 3 of us all coming from our hospice experience and,
Yep.
really see the value and the benefit in grief groups, and that support community and being with other people. I mean, Kat, you don't probably know my story, but I wouldn't be talking to you and any of you if my dad didn't make me to go to a hospice grief group. So as a teenager. So
Yep.
like we all, I think, probably all run groups and see the value in them because there is that support and that commonality, and you learn from each other. And what I'm always amazed about is like people will come to my group and they'll hear other people's stories, and then they'll come into their individual and they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, my heart just breaks for this one." And
Mhm.
I'm like, wow, like they're saying the same thing
Yeah.
about you, but I can't say that. But
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
also gives them a bit of a different perspective sometimes and allows them to
Mhm.
have empathy for other people and just be a support. And I have a we we have our major highway here is called the Northway. And I always joke around that the Northway is like the most dangerous place because all my grieving clients are on the Northway coming back and forth to work crying. And so one of the groups that I did, they have a Facebook Messenger chat. It's called We Cry on the Northway.
Oh.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But, to have that support and they reach out to each other when something comes up. And, it's just sometimes it's really nice to be able to have that added support that's outside of your friends and family that will be
Yeah.
honest with you and give you some help and support.
Yeah. I try to encourage people, try it once. If you don't like it, you don't
Exactly.
have to go back. But
Mhm.
give it a go, and just see if it works for you. And if you didn't like one, maybe try one more. And if they aren't for everybody, I'm sure that's true. But I have found that people who have at least tried it go, oh, that was way better than I thought it was
Yeah.
going to
Mhm.
So
be.
Mhm.
true.
They're afraid they're going to have to expose everything and share everything. And it's not like that at all. It's a safe environment.
Yeah.
And, I had someone tell me last night that, she goes to virtual groups, but she also goes to an in-person one because that makes her get out of the house at least an hour a week, right? So even
Yeah.
having that as part of your routine could be so beneficial.
Yes, absolutely. Finding things to get up and get out for is a
Mhm.
Yeah.
is a crucial piece as well. Yeah.
Are you ready to take the next step on your grief journey with real tools and compassionate guidance? The Grief Ladies are launching a brand new workshop series based on their signature grief GRIEF framework. 5 trail markers to help you find your footing after your loss: grounding, rebuilding, interacting, evolving, and finding. Each workshop focuses on one trail marker, guiding you through practical steps to move from surviving to living again, all in a space that's honest, supportive, and real. Led by grief experts Kelly Daugherty and Karyn Arnold, these workshops combine decades of experience with tools you can start using today. Visit griefladies.com to explore the upcoming workshops because you don't have to climb this mountain alone.
Yeah, for sure. So Kelly has a segment that we do here. Kelly, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. So I'm a big believer that we need to celebrate our loved one's life rather than just their death. And so having rituals or ways to honor our loved ones that have died. And obviously you have shared briefly about your loss history, which was an awful lot by the time you reach 30. That seems pretty overwhelming. And so are there things that you do today to celebrate some of their lives?
You know, um, it's interesting. It was 43 years ago my mother passed away, and I would have to say my mother and father's deaths, of course, were my most significant, although I was very, very close with one of my aunts and my grandmother. Um, I was adopted, and so these 2 people showed me extraordinary unconditional love, and I lost them too soon. And, I think they also passed away before I had my own kids, and so my kids never got to meet them. Well, they got to meet my dad for a few years, but, I always say my dad died the day my mom did because he could never move through his grief.
Hmm.
And, he would say, "Oh, your mom would just love these kids," and he would cry, like, he was such a jovial, fun guy. And so, that's why having, um routines and moving through your grief is so important because if you're not moving through it, not only have you lost that loved one. Now I felt like I lost my dad earlier, and my kids never got to have a grandpa I expected because he was so lost in grief. But anyway, moving forward from that, I think for me, I haven't really made it a practice to go visit the graveside or anything like that, but I feel their presence within me. And I remember the things they would say to me that were fun or lighthearted. You know, if I was pouty, my mom would say, if you keep doing that, you're going to step on your lip. And I would incorporate in those things with my children and say, my mom would say, or now with my grandkids, I even say, well, my mom would say, or my dad would do this. And I really feel like that's helping them to live on so they can feel a little piece of them. I feel like the best honor I can give to my family is by living a happy, good, loving life and remembering them, the wonderful things that they had taught me and shared with me, and passing those things on to the ones I love now, that my family now, that are my children, my grandchildren. Yeah. So, I have certain things in my home that I really like looking at that were my parents. But I don't get as much satisfaction out of that as I do sharing that kind of love that they gave to me that was so unconditional.
Yeah.
So that's where I purpose to really give them memory is in giving what they gave me.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Kat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's great. I mean, and really that's what we're, trying to do is to kind of keep the memories alive, keep the love alive, keep talking about them. There's so many things. I think, you're talking about parent loss and
yeah,
understanding that our parents spend our lives trying to instill things in us and trying to give us those messages for however long they're here. And, whether we're aware of it at the time or not, understanding that these are things that were meant to be carried through and that they wanted us to take, not just for that time, but to continue. And so being able to do that and being able to keep that sort of out and continuing in your family, I mean, it doesn't get much better than that,
no,
and just to be doing, even in the work you're doing,
yeah.
I'm sure that has such an influence. So thank you for sharing that, Kat. We, switching gears a little bit because we are, as we said, very action focused here. We are trying to help put some plans into place. We always like to sort of wrap things up with an action task for each week and for each episode that we're meeting. So I was writing down some things as you were talking, and I think there was so much good stuff, but the one that really stood out just because it's so unique is the idea of maybe somebody could try this, this week when they think of something that needs to be done or they come across something that they need help with, to write it down, put it in a jar, and then the next time somebody offers to help, kind of letting them know specifically, this is what you can do. So I think that is a great action task that has something very specific that they can start with. Anything else that you want to add to that, as far as a helpful thing that a person could take action on?
One thing that I have found very powerful in my work is a grateful list.
Okay.
Every day, writing 3 things down that you are grateful for. And in the beginning, you don't feel grateful. You can't even really think of anything you're grateful for. But if you have a favorite pair of socks, then write that down on that list. If you got to have a good meal that day, write it down on that list. The thing about that practice and making it a normal practice is eventually your heart will catch up with your head. If you make it a practice to write down the things that you are grateful for, you will begin to recognize the things you are grateful for. So you may not feel it at first, but you will eventually if you put that into practice. And the practice of gratefulness has great significance on your well-being and mental health and physical health even.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Kat. Now,
Oh, yeah.
if anyone wanted to get in touch with you or find out more about you, how would they go about doing that?
You can go to balancinggrief.com, balanceinggrief.com. If you want to talk to me directly, go to support@balanceinggrief.com, and I'll be happy to get back with you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah, it was such a pleasure. This was great.
Thank you, Kat.
Yeah. Well, Kat, thank you so much. Kelly, thank you. And thank you to everybody. Really happy to have you here today. And make sure you look up Kat and learn more about what she's doing. So thank you again.
Thanks for joining us on the Grief Ladies.
Don't wait to feel better to get started. Getting started is what makes you feel better. Put this week's tool to work.
If today's episode helped, share it with someone who needs it and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you.
And remember, we're here for you, your trusted grief ladies, navigating this path together.